Welcome to the AI argument. I'm Frank Prendergast. This is my co-host Justin Collery. How are you doing, Justin?
I feel like Rip Van Winkle, still waiting
Rip Van
for
Winkle.
models to be. Yeah, he was 40 codes, dude. Went to sleep for 40 years or something like that. Woke up and OpenAI still hadn't released any models. That's what I'm feeling like. How about you? You
Yeah,
good?
I'm terrible. I'm feeling terrible. I'm
Really?
stuck. Yeah, you're gonna have to figure out how to pull me out of this trough of disillusionment.
Well, you've come to the right place. I have all sorts of fun AI things to talk to you about to take you out of your trough of doom.
Well, Gartner told me in no uncertain terms that I was sliding into a trough of disillusionment. Apparently, we've passed the peak of the hype cycle of AI, and we're now sliding into that trough of disillusionment. What do you
It's
reckon?
unbelievable.
Are you?
It's like Gartner have the attention span of a 10-year-old boy who's watched nothing but YouTube shorts for the last 10 years and even pre-born. It's incredible that Gartner would come out and say this. We're a year, 18 months tops into this technology. We're only just now, I can tell you from my own personal experience, we are just now getting into the point where we're harnessing the technology. People, like, think about the people who are going to, especially the Gartner we're talking about here, right? So the people that Gartner talk to are big corporates, banks, insurance companies, big boring companies. And in those big boring companies, the people that make decisions are going to be VPs and SVPs and executives and all those type of senior people who haven't, touched a keyboard in years because they have teams of secretaries to write their emails and do all that sort of stuff. And so they don't know, they have to, there's a sort of a lag between them hearing about the technology and then learning how to apply it and all that sort of stuff. And that takes about 12 or 18 months. So that's where we are now. So Gartner
Yeah.
might be in a trough of disillusionment because they're not making as much money now as they were 6 months ago because they can't spin the rubbish that they were spinning before. And now the executives are starting to learn what the truth is. And the truth is, you don't need Gartner because AI will do the job for you anyway.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, now they did say that that the trough of disillusionment wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and that it's a result of the hype, people being disappointed after the hype cycle, that like AI isn't just a magic fix all, that like you can just hire an AI consultant and suddenly all your business woes are gone. And that now that people were realizing the kind of the reality of the situation, what AI can actually do and what it actually takes to roll out an AI project in your company, that the trough of disillusionment would likely lead to people, being much, much more laser focused on ROI and implementing things properly. And then we would actually get, I think they called it the plateau of productivity, which is a great term.
Yeah, it's not going to be a
And
plateau. Go on, sorry.
well, yeah, sure. You and
It's
I
going to be a
certainly hope
plateau
it
that's
won't
on a
be a
30 or
plateau.
40-degree upward slant like that. It's going to be far from it. I was working on stuff this week where we were working on sensitive documents. So sensitive, Frank, I can't even tell you what they were. But they were sensitive documents, and they were essentially images. They were scans. So there was these people, very highly paid people, needed to be able to cut, copy, and paste some of the text. They didn't believe that it would do it. And we used Claude to do it. Not only did it extract the text perfectly,
Mm,
absolutely perfectly, it extracted all of the tables perfectly. It extracted, the colors perfectly. There was artifacts in the documents which were like arrows that pointed up and down, and that had meaning.
mhm.
Picked it all out perfectly. There was text in there that had lines through it. There were old faxes that were, in an old fax, sometimes the paper would move, and the text gets offset halfway
Right.
down a line.
Yes.
100%, right? Then I got it to classify those documents. I got it to extract and to categorize data in it. So basically, I was taking unstructured data and making it structured. And we're talking like mind blowing 100%. And
Mm,
it's a real, for me, what's happening is people have used, let's say, ChatGPT 3.5, these executives and whatever, the people that Gartner talked to, and they were disappointed, right? They're going, yeah, but really, and the technology really has moved on since then. And what's happening now is that people are discovering what the real capabilities are. And it was funny, the audience that I presented this to were so blown away that the original ask, which was just to be able to to cut, copy, and paste text. They said, okay, forget about that. Right? That's easy. This is our entire business process from end to end. We need to automate this, this, and this. And that's where your plateau of productivity comes from, where you start to automate parts of business processes. But that's brilliant, right? And it's all large language models. So I think, yeah, I don't know what Gartner are talking about. We're not you know.
Well, I mean, so related to that, there was that other study that you and I talked about that said so it was the Rand Corporation study, and it looked at the fact that 80% of AI projects are failing.
They don't, Frank. They don't. That's a lie. Who are the Rand Corporation anyway? I thought they made guns and stuff like that. They're not very good. They're not very good.
I thought they were from a film. When I heard Rand Corporation, I was like, wasn't that RoboCop? I'm not sure.
They were baddies. They weren't a nice company at all. And they don't know what they're talking about here, because I read through this article, and this drives me absolutely nuts. Yeah. Right? 80% of AI projects fail, and then they start to go on about collecting and cleaning your data so that you can train your models. That's machine learning. That's not AI. It's a totally different science and a totally different set of skills. And I'll tell you what the big difference is between machine learning. Yes, it is. It's totally different, right? Machine learning is when you get loads of data and a blank page or blankish page, and you train your model on this in order to predict an outcome. And it's inherently untrustworthy, and that's why 80% of them fail, because you can't get the model to explain to you why it's giving you an answer. But a large language model, totally, you don't train them. You can fine-tune them, but that's a waste of time if you ask me. Right? You're just using the model as it is. And every time it gives you an answer, you can ask it to explain to you why it gave you that answer, which makes it inherently more trustworthy, not less. But machine learning models are black boxes, and they're very difficult to get right. They're very expensive, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with them.
I would push back on you,
corporation, for talking about them.
I would push back on you on a couple of points from a ridiculous standpoint, because I do not have your technological knowledge. But I mean, I imagine, first of all, that yes, what they're talking about must be around training model, or using RAG.
RAG. Yes. But they're not using RAG. They specifically talked about data collection, data cleaning, and then training the models.
But, if you take, for example, we've talked a lot about, like, bots that go rogue, like that airline that told a passenger to go ahead and book, and you get a reimbursement later, and it was absolute rubbish. But presumably that was because that bot was drawing from information that was out of date, so it didn't know which information to serve the customer, so it picked something. Turned out it gave them something totally out of date. And I assume that's what they're talking about, that there is a certain level of, like, data cleanup that has to happen if you expect AI to give meaningful answers to the user. And the second thing that I push back on is asking a large language model why it did something. My understanding was that answer would be just as made up on the spot as anything a large language model outputs. So, like, if you could get it to go and get you data, but then asking it why it chose that data, I think you're very likely just to get back a hallucination. Would you not agree?
No, and I'm going to give you two cool tricks
for
free. This is more valuable than any Gartner report, right? Here's two cool tricks. Right. So the first thing you can do is, if you're doing a RAG system, so retrieval augmented generation, you can whisper to the model as you're giving it the data. So you do a search, right, and on your database, and you get your documents back, and don't just give the AI the documents and hope for the best, right? You can give it in a JSON format, which is structured, and you can give, like, hyperlinks or whatever other information. And then you can give instructions in that message too, saying only answer from these documents. Be sure always to provide links. And you can have a conversation over and back, and you can basically hard code messages into what you're giving to the AI to steer it to give you the response that you want, or to be more firm with it. So you can give it the system prompt, which is its overriding thing. But when you're doing the bit down below where you're doing your RAG retrieval and stuff like that, you can throw in comments in there too. And that's a really good way to steer the AI to get the response you want. That's point number one. Point number two, Was you wanted to know about? Sorry, there was what was your second pushback?
About asking an LLM why it did something. I mean, I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
that.
here's a great
Yeah.
strategy for you, right? So what you do is if you think what the way that an LM works is it outputs the next token, right? So it's always outputting the next token. So what you could, but it's got attention, right? So some of those tokens feed back to help it output the token after that one, and so on. So you can ask it to output the same answer twice. So you can say to yourself, you can say to the LLM, I want you to output what you think is the right answer. Then I want you to check that again and output what actually is the right answer. And then I want you to give me the reasoning as to why you gave me that answer. And because it sees all of the previous text beforehand, the reasoning is totally accurate. Like, I mean, I've done this a load of times. So the reasoning is good. And also by telling it to output the answer and then check its work and output it a second time, you'll tend to get better results.
Have you never been able to get an LLM to completely change its rationale for why it did something a certain way? Because I have, and I would think that that's because, it's not actually why it did something a certain way. It's kind of like humans when we that thing of like, well, we purchase based on emotion, and then we rationalize afterwards. I feel like
Mm.
it's the same thing with an LLM, that it's rationalizing what it did afterwards, but like it's not actually what happened in the black box of the LLM.
Um, the mechanics of what you say may well be true, but I think there's no, it's not quite the same though, because so let's say I ask it to categorize all of these fruits, and it categorizes this as an apple, and then it explains that it's categorized it as an apple because it's green and it's round and it's got a
Mm.
leaf on the top of it. That's probably, even if that wasn't the reasoning that went into it, those list of reasons is probably fairly accurate. And somewhere in its data, when it was looking to see if this was an apple, those were the types of things that it thought about. So no, I don't know. I wouldn't agree with you.
Yeah, I think there's a difference though between like the rationalization, which can actually be really useful, but just then understanding that that's not necessarily what happened in the black box, which just relates back to the fact that you may, if your data isn't clean and ready for the AI to actually generate relevant information to the user, it's not necessarily going to be able to rationalize, well, I should give it this and not this. But
I mean,
what really
intuitively,
strikes me out of everything you've said, I think what really strikes me, both in terms of like you feeling we're not sliding into a trough of disillusionment, and in terms of your views on this, it sounds to me like your view would maybe be that if 80% of AI projects are failing, it's not because of AI, it's probably because there's a hell of a lot of chancers out there implementing in a horrendous fashion. That's what I'm hearing from your from
you're
your
you're yeah, that's a very harsh judgment on all the poor AI engineers out there.
no,
um,
not the
there's
AI
a,
engineers, but like consultants going into companies, and
oh
or
yes,
third party vendors going, oh, we have an amazing tool that'll solve all your problems, and it can't.
yeah, let me yeah, that's totally correct, right? And certainly I'll be strongly of the view that AI, tell you another thing I did this week. AI changes the economics for software development. And so developing software, if that's your business, or if you use software in your business, building that muscle memory of how to develop software using AI is going to be a super important skill as a company to have. And so you should get really good at it. And I'll tell you that what we're doing at the moment is we'll take a process, right? Something that you want to automate using AI, some sort of a process, right? And what you want to do is you want to break it down into really, really small chunks. And from a technical point of view, you want those chunks to have sort of 200 or 300 lines of code. That's your kind of sweet spot. And the reason you're doing that is because it's really easy to have a conversation with an AI with 300 lines of code. Fits nice and easily into the context window. It's not too complicated. You can debug it really quickly, and it's an over and back conversation. And you'll knock those out in a day, right? And so my environment, that's an AWS Lambda function, and you'll just knock those out in a day. And then what you do is you create like a pipeline, so a message, so that when that thing completes, you put a message on a queue, and the next function picks it up, which does another small bit of your pipeline, right? And what you'll end up doing is building quite sophisticated and quite clever systems very quickly that way, and they're very maintainable. And And so that's how you develop using AI, right? That's the kind of process that you use. It's a pipeline, and you can just push stuff out. You can map it out really easily. So to develop the skill internally to do that is a very, very important thing to do. And I mean, I've already seen internally companies who sell software traditionally would have sold, so not the Gartners, but similar type of company where they're look. I don't. I mean, this made sense in the old world where maintaining software banks. When I started working, I worked in a bank, and the line at the time was banks make bad software. And the truth is, they made expensive software because you had to hire all these engineers to write the software. Then you had to keep them to maintain the software. And then if something broke them, so it made a lot of sense just to outsource that to an external company. And from the external company's point of view, they just come in and say, well, what do you want? And they'll build it and they'll charge you a lot of money to maintain it. But you've offloaded risk and cost, right? Potential cost. I don't think those sums hold anymore with AI, because you can have AI maintain the software, and the writing of the software is, maybe half, maybe a quarter, maybe a fifth of what it was before. It's much easier to maintain. It's going to be nice and modular, and you can get it to do whatever you want. So Gartner have their I don't know what the hell, heads up their asses. And as for the Rand Corporation, trying to say that machine learning projects are the same as AI, they're not. And machine learning is truly a black box. I wouldn't trust what came out of a machine learning model myself because I don't know how it works. But AI is different. I like it talks English, which is the same language as me. As soon as it stops talking English, I won't trust it anymore.
You mentioned there about the costs coming down, which
Yes.
is kind of related to what we're going to talk about next. But before we get into the whole costs thing, so Google have released what are they called? Gems, Google Gems. And this is kind of like what we talked about before about like Google do stuff and they're doing some really cool stuff, like we said, but a lot of it is just like, yeah, who cares? And this is like a ridiculous example of like, they're custom GPTs from what I can tell. So,
Yep.
they're way behind the curve. There's nothing innovative there. There's nothing new. But it's a big announcement. Ooh, Google Gems. I mean, I don't know if I'd even have announced this. I would have just quietly added them in and thought and been like, there you go. There's a feature you've been waiting for ages. Only how long after OpenAI have had their version of it available?
OpenAI are kind of killing their custom GPTs, and they haven't done the revenue share thing. So they've fallen out of love with the custom GPTs. And Google are Google are famous.
Yeah, I think the whole custom GPT store thing just fizzled. But custom GPTs themselves are very valuable. I mean, I think again, I think Google Gems, yeah, it's cool. And if I was predominantly using Google's AI, I would have been screaming for Gems for a long time. I use ChatGPT, so I use custom GPTs, and I use them all the time. I have custom GPTs for all the stuff I do regularly in my business. But
Frank, you're a marketing guy, right? What do
yeah.
Google have to do? Because it's like Google released Gems. Google fly to the moon. Google, what's going on there?
They're very, very, very slowly trying to improve their marketing, but they're doing it at a snail's pace. And they need to make themselves cool again. But the bigger question here is, like you mentioned a while back about, I think it was it when Grok 2 was released, you made the point that like there's no secret sauce here. If you have the compute, if you have the chips, if you have the technology, you can build a powerful LLM, full stop. And the Google Gems thing just reminds me of that, because I read an article during the week as well that was just saying like AI is being commoditized. And that's how this ties back to what you said about the costs coming down. That one of the reasons the cost is coming down is not necessarily because it's getting cheaper, but because all the products are the same. So the only thing they have to compete on is price, which is a little bit worrisome as well, because it's like, well, yes, the costs are coming down, but is that sustainable? Because all these companies are bleeding money.
Well, I don't, Frank, you say that with great confidence, right? We don't know that they're bleeding money. I mean, we don't know that OpenAI, for instance, are bleeding money. We just don't know that.
I do think I read that they're like Whoa, I think I did read some stats on them. Unfortunately, I've got a terrible head for figures and I can't remember what it was, but it was like 3.5 billion in revenue, but 5 billion in debt or something like that.
That's not bad. You know, I'd pay that. But I mean, the drop in costs, right, for Anthropic up until recently, I would have said yes, they're hemorrhaging money. Google are obviously throwing money at this thing hand over fist. Grok, I would say, are losing money on this. But OpenAI, and now Anthropic, I think that a lot of the engineering work has gone into making the models smaller, which makes them cheaper to do the inference and serve out the tokens. And the hardware price, I think the price of the hardware is remaining constant, but the amount of tokens that it can generate is also increasing. So I think there is a push. You know, there is a downward trend in the price anyway. So I don't know that they're losing money hand over fist. All of this stuff is very interesting to me. That it is a commodity, right? What's interesting is
Mhm.
that their products are totally interchangeable. So, you know, if you don't like the OpenAI API, it's very easy to switch to the Anthropic one. You basically have no code to change, very little code to change, and away you go. Um, and so I have a rumor for you, Frank, by the way.
Oh
I have a
yeah.
rumor. Yeah. So, and I know you like Project Strawberry, and you're very excited because you want more capable models faster to be put into the hands of everybody on the planet. And there's been a lot of researchers have left OpenAI over the
Mhm.
last, I mean, you know, this, you know, whatever, the tech team and the alignment team and so on. And so some people that know a little bit about this, I know you've been looking, you know, keeping an eye on this too, but they were saying that Project Strawberry may well be to do it. It's like a multi-agent model that uses synthetic data in order to train it. And we're back to this whole flywheel thing. So what they're using AI to train AI. And as soon as you can do that, then the thing
Mhm.
becomes, it's a flywheel, it becomes very, very fast. And if that was the case and I was in the engineering team, I mean, I would have an early view as to, well, I'm not going to be needed for much longer. The thing is just going to go and do its own thing. And if I was in the alignment team, I might say, well, I can't even align the model that's training the bigger model. So there's no hope of me ever being able to align the bigger model. And I might get upset about that. So who knows? Maybe that. But I'm giving up. I've given up
Yeah.
totally on opening. I'm not speculating. I'm not waiting. I'm done with them.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you, but I still have to admit that I was kind of excited when I saw the articles during the week that had a little bit more concrete information about Strawberry and about its relationship to QStar and the fact that they're hoping to roll it out. But again, yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath because they were talking about fall, but OpenAI, they seem to use that as they just always say, yeah, we'll release it in the fall. That just seems to be their
Winter is
their
coming.
default line.
The main thing
Um,
about OpenAI, of course, Frank, at the moment is they're raising more money at a valuation of 100 billion. So they have to create some hype in order to justify the valuation.
well, two other things about OpenAI caught my eye. One was you sent me an article about the fact that they've committed to sending new models to I can't even remember the name of it, the AI Safety Committee in the US
Yes.
government.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of that, there was a letter from two ex OpenAI members, um, basically calling Sam Altman and OpenAI as a company, calling them out as hypocrites, saying that they are basically the gist of it was they're giving lip service to regulation, saying, "Oh yeah, we need regulation, we need government regulation, AI needs to be regulated," and then anytime regulation's actually on the table, they oppose it. So right now, California is trying to bring in an AI safety bill, and OpenAI are against it, which is fascinating because on the other hand, you're looking at, they're sending new models to the government. But when you dig into that thing about the new models and sending it to the safety committee,
Mm.
there's nothing binding about that. It's just a committee with no real power, and OpenAI and Anthropic saying, yeah, we'll show you our models. But if the committee says, we don't like this, it's really unsafe, do not expose the public to this, they're not under any obligation to do anything with what the committee tells them to do.
No, I mean I don't know what sort of regulation would you like, Frank? Like where do you want to go? I mean, I think there's pretty good The open market is a pretty good regulator.
I think that, well, as you know, I think things like the EU AI Act are critical. and that is the kind of regulation that I want. And is it problematic? Have we got things? Has the EU got things wrong in the Act? I have no doubt, absolutely, and I'm sure we will need to monitor it, and we'll need to amend it, and we'll need to make sure that it makes sense going forward. But even the OpenAI letter from the 2X members, they even specifically mentioned the coming out in support of the EU AI Act. So yeah, absolutely, I'm in support of that. I would be in support of the California Act, or bill rather. And I just find it fascinating.
I was a big fan of Ronald Reagan years ago. I liked Ronald Reagan. And what was his thing was the scariest 8 words in the English language were, "I'm from the government. I'm here to help." And, I just like the market. Look, it's not in OpenAI's interest to release a dangerous model, right? This whole thing about pushing boundaries is very important.
But okay, but even the one of the articles that talked about Strawberry and about QStar, I mean, even the headline of that was slightly worrisome, because the headline was, OpenAI rushed to release Strawberry. I do not want AI companies rushing to release anything.
I do.
I know I want the tech. I can't wait to see it, but I do not want them rushing to release it and not taking due care with security and safety and alignment.
I tell you, it just because it does, and it does bring up. So we had these videos this week where we had, what's the name of the brothers?
Oh, is it the Door brothers?
The Door brothers. Yeah, and they did that video. They had another video where they had Donald Trump with guns. They had Kamala Harris was lying in a room surrounded by like hard liquor bottles, and had the Pope, and had Kim Jong Un, and it was just hilarious, right? I was really, really entertained. It was a brilliant video, right? Clearly a parody. And there was another video released this week, which was the Harry Potter, and it was a Harry Potter song, and he was a hillbilly Harry Potter. Brilliant, right? Great fun. And there's going to come a time when somebody's going to do a video that's not obviously parody, or which crosses a line that says, "Oh, yeah, that wasn't that funny." And that actually the essence of great comedy is that you're always pushing that line to see where it is. And the only way you push the line is by putting the tools into people's hands and seeing what happens. And then when it's whack-a-mole, when somebody crosses the line, you got to cut off their fingers. But, eggs got to be broken. It's got to be done.
I mean, yeah, I think even anyone who's listened to any other episode knows that this is where we fundamentally disagree. But my goodness. Okay, I was just going to bring up another topic, and I realized the time. So let's close out on Westworld becoming a reality.
You don't want to close out on the AI controlled tank, that nice fluffy story that I gave to you.
All right. Every week now we have another weaponized military machine that has been empowered with AI to go out and kill people on its own. Oh.
All right. So look, if you don't want to do that, what we will talk to then is about this is Westworld meets Five Nights at Freddy's. Disney
meets Terminator.
Well, no, I mean it's not Terminator because it's too animatronic, and it's too sort of backward 1950s fun park sort of looking.
It looks to me like a little bit like Arnie in that first movie when his face gets kind of blasted off.
Maybe a bit. For people who haven't seen it, it's this animatronic type robot thing that just looks like it was made sometime around 1997. But they're sort of parroting it as the sort of frontier of robotics, and its eyes move and whatever. It tries to make facial expressions, but it doesn't really have muscles to do it. It was the most hideous, ugly thing I've ever seen. And
incredibly clever. So like the essence of it is that its eye movements, it even simulates breathing, so it moves up and down slightly, and its eye movements were the big thing that they've programmed it to know, like when to meet your gaze, when to look away, and it even has these rapid little random eye movements that humans have. So the eyes look incredibly sentient.
Scary they
Terrifying.
look.
Terrifying.
I can tell you that robot scares me more than unshackled AI scares you.
But yes, but partly, like it's a pair of eyes and it's got teeth,
Yeah,
but there's no face. So
weird.
I'm hoping when they put a face on that thing, it won't be quite so terrifying.
Maybe Disney rushed to release their model.
But it's definitely, I mean, throw an AI in that thing, throw ChatGPT in there with a voice model, and yeah, you're 80% of the way to Westworld, I think.
Well, look, they're gonna do. I saw a couple of videos this week of robots like this that were gonna fold my clothes and do stuff, which is in a house of teenagers an absolute godsend. And that robot is not going to fold my clothes. I don't want it anywhere near me. The most disgusting, horrible thing I've ever seen. I want Scarlett Johansson in my pockets. That's what we've talked about for months. Still hasn't happened. Let's go OpenAI. Release some models, please. Give me the product.
Well, keep holding your breath. Keep holding your breath, and we'll see what happens. I'm afraid I'm hoping that you might have to hold your breath for a little bit longer. I want the tech as well, but that safety and alignment bit, I think that's kind of vital.
Don't agree. Right. Until next week. It's a pleasure as
See you
always.
next week to disagree on more stuff. Catch you later.
Take it easy.